Welcome back to Watches and Politics. I'm Edi Shipoli, and today we're stepping into a world that exists behind the velvet ropes and inside the glass cases, the elite universe of watch collecting. But this isn't just a story about connoisseurship. It's about power, it's about influence, and it's about the quiet diplomacy of luxury. For as long as people have worn watches, collecting them has been a symbol of wealth. But over the last 20 years, it has evolved into something more complex, a tool of soft power. Rare and vintage watches have become political statements, economic assets, as well as cultural flags. When oligarchs, billionaires, or head of states strap on certain watches, they aren't just checking the hour, of course. They're declaring identity, they're declaring allegiances, and they're declaring vision, hinting at what kind of world they see themselves ruling. Luxury watch collecting has shifted from private passion to a highly visible mark of elite identity. For today's wealthy class, owning a Paul Newman Rolex Daytona or a platinum Patek Philippe isn't just a taste. It's a credential. In elite circles, watches operate like cultural capital. They open doors, confer legitimacy, and mark belonging. The watch world has its own codes, its own lexicon, and its own hierarchy. Knowing the difference between a Nautilus 3700 and a 5711 isn't trivia, it's insider currency. Knowledge itself becomes status. Not long ago, a watch collector might have been an older gentleman with a velvet-lined drawer of pocket watches or a pedal razor at the Geneva auction. But in the 21st century, the profile has exploded. Collectors now range from Silicon Valley entrepreneurs and Middle Eastern royals to fashion influencers, Eastern European oligarchs, and South Asian enthusiasts. Each group brings its own priorities: investment, heritage, exclusivity, or the storytelling power of objects that outlive their owners. It's worth distinguishing between an enthusiast and a collector. An enthusiast might wear a watch daily, read the blogs, even know the difference between an ETA movement and an in-house caliber. But a collector goes further, or rather deeper. Collecting is curated, intentional, guided by a philosophy of what belongs and why. Buying volume for hype or flipping is consumption. Collecting at its best is education, a journey through design eras, movement architecture, provenance, and even geopolitics. This is very subjective. It's my distinguishing between a collector and an enthusiast that others might have different opinions. Just as politics varies by culture, so does collecting. In Japan, collectors obsess over subtly, like finishing, dials, accuracy. In Middle East, larger, customized watches with rare complications reflect prestige. In the United States, tastes split between rugged tool watches, grail hunting at Philips auctions, or snapping up modern Rolexes for resale. The result is a global mosaic, each region layering its identity into the culture of collecting. And here's where it turns political. The watches someone collects can reveal alliances and ideologies. A public figure curating Soviet-era Raketa or Poljot watches may be signaling nostalgia for the USSR. A diplomat treasuring a Vacheron Constantin gifted during a treaty talk, for example, isn't just holding steel and gold. They are wearing a memory of soft power at work. In this sense, a collection is more than private enjoyment. It is a curated portfolio of messages and affiliations. Each piece becomes a symbol, worn in the theater of power and influence. So when we look at royals, presidents, oligarchs, or even tech billionaires today, we're not just looking at taste. We're watching how they use timepieces as tools of identity, diplomacy, and quietly politics itself. We're also looking at tools that makes them think where they belong. Now that we've looked at what it means to be a collector across cultures, let's talk about power. How collecting functions as cultural capital and translates into political influence. In sociology, cultural capital means your knowledge and taste can act like currency. In watches, that capital is built not just by what you wear, but what you collect and how you talk about them. Watches are powerful carriers of status: intimate, portable, visible. A $100,000 tourbillon doesn't just say, "I'm rich." It says, "I know Breguet and I belong here." In elite spaces, from Davos to clubs in Geneva or Riyadh, watch knowledge works like a handshake. Two leaders spotting each other's rare Lange Zeitwerk or vintage Universal Genève are no longer strangers. They are insiders. And that's where collecting gets political. Watches unlock access to previews, VIP dinners, meetings with brand heads. In those rooms, deals are made and soft power is exercised. Political elites have long used watches as part of their personal image. Nicolas Sarkozy wore a Patek Philippe Calatrava in office. Vladimir Putin has sported everything from a Blanc Paul Le Mans flyback to a Patek Philippe perpetual calendar. These aren't random. They are signals of taste, they are signals of legacy, and signals of authority. Sometimes, collecting even acts as cultural diplomacy. Heads of state gifting F.P. Journes or Richard Milles aren't just exchanging objects. They're demonstrating fluency in a luxury language of belonging. And watches are also assets. Like art or wine, they've become financialized. At the top level collectors, they don't just shape auctions, they move markets. Collecting here is a strategy rather than only a hobby that someone enjoys. This link between watches and power runs deep. And also it runs very, very long. Let's take, for example, Napoleon Bonaparte, who aligned himself with modernity by patronizing Abraham Louis Breguet at his time. Or let's talk about King Farouk, or his father, King Fuad, who commissioned a Vacheron Constantin pocket watch in 1946 with 14 complications and 820 components, one of the most complex watches of its time. After his abdication in 1952, his vast collection was auctioned in 1954, drawing global attention to Egypt and the Egyptian dynasty. Emperor Puyi of China, the last king emperor, owned a Patek Philippe reference 96 Quantième Lune. He gave this to his Russian interpreter, and in 2023, that same watch sold for $6.2 million at Philips in Hong Kong. Today, the same logic applies. Putin's Patek tourbillons and Blancpains project a masculine legacy. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman now wears million-dollar Richard Milles. Youthful, tech-forward signaling. Emmanuel Macron flipped the script, appearing with a with a modest Bell and Ross. I think it was BR like V92, which gave a restrained as political messaging. Watches are one of few luxury items where leaders can flaunt without backlash. They are part of a costume of power. Even outside politics, collectors wield influence. Take Mark Zuckerberg, for example. Once the face of Silicon Valley minimalism with only one t-shirt, he admitted in 2024, after seeing Anant Ambani's Richard Mille RM3001, that he suddenly thought watches were cool. Since then, however, Zuckerberg has amazed Patek Philippe, De Bethuns, Jaeger-LeCoultre's, Bulgaris, multiple FP Journes, and ultra-rare Grubel forces like the handmade one or recently even a prototype. When he wears a Grubel Forsey during a meta-policy shift, is deliberate, aligning the company with values of exclusivity and craftsmanship. His transformation mirrors a large shift. Tech moguls moving from casual hoodies to curated luxury, blending personal image with corporate identity. So whether we're talking about emperors, presidents, or billionaires, the message is the same. Collecting isn't just connoisseurship. It's signaling, it's networking, and it's legacy building. At the highest level of collection is never about timekeeping, and it's always about power. Let's step into the auction room for a second, the stage where collecting meets spectacle and perhaps becomes politics. The hush, the bits, the hammer strike, it's a theater. And in that moment, a watch stops being just an instrument of time, it becomes a symbol of legacy and a symbol of power. Auctions are more than markets, they're political arenas. When a crown prince, oligarch, or tech mogul bids on a watch once owned by an emperor, an astronaut, they are not just buying history. They're inserting themselves into history. Legacy building in real time, if you wish. The 1917 sale of Paul Newman's Rolex Daytona, it went for $17 million at Philips, proved this point. The provenance mattered, but the bigger story was who showed up. Saudi royals, Hong Kong tycoons, Russian financiers, Silicon Valley billionaires, all staking cultural claims. Bidding became a coded form of diplomacy in the same room. Christie's, Sotheby's, Philips. These houses don't just sell, they curate. By spotlighting a rare FP Journe or elevating a vintage Grand Seiko, they decide which makers and eras enter the canon. Their choices shape market valuations and cultural memory as well. Beneath the drama lies finance. Auctions sit inside the luxury asset economy tied to offshore wealth and tax jurisdictions. At $4 million sale in Geneva isn't just a horological piece. It's about capital flowing and discreet maneuvering. Sometimes auctions even mask political exchanges. A watch won publicly may later end up with a diplomat or an ally behind closed doors. Collectors in the gray zone, such as oligarchs, sanctioned businessmen, and intermediaries, use watches as mobile assets, laundering tools, or diplomatic gifts. Governments themselves, they join in. The Kremlin preserves historic Russian watches. The US has gifted Hamiltons and Timex to dignitaries. Royal families still commission custom pieces for state visits or gifting them around. Why? Because watches are discreet, portable, and culturally accepted. Well, they are perfect for walking the line between a token, a bribe, or a diplomatic gift. And then there's the collector, connoisseur. Not the hype buyer, not the flipper, but the curator. They know enamel dials, movement architecture, and they know provenance. Their choice elevate obscure brands, reframe what matters, and define which eras endure. At this level, collecting becomes cultural authorship, shaping not only markets but memory itself. Well, at the end, auctions reveal the truth. Collecting is never neutral. A watch tells time, but a collection tells a worldview. Legacy over novelty, discretion over flash, performance over disposability. And here lies the paradox. In a world speeding towards disposability, the most political act may be a slowdown, to preserve, and to choose. To collect is to declare what matters. And that quiet declaration, ticking under a cuff, can be the most timeless political act of it all. Thank you for joining me on Watches and Politics. As you already know, I'm your host, Eddie Shipoli. And if you've enjoyed this journey into collectors, auctions, and influence, don't forget to subscribe and share. Next time, in the next episode, we'll leave the auction hall and look at time itself, time zones. How carving the globe into medians wasn't just convenience, but it was about power. From empire and war to diplomacy and globalization, we'll uncover how controlling time became one of the great political acts of the modern era. Don't miss it. And until then, keep your movements precise and your politics timeless.